Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last module of our 3-module AWIA workshop. If you have been to our other 2 modules, you will recognize me as the main presenter of our workshops, but this module is going to be a little bit different. Today, our module will be led by Bria Crawford, my colleague at EPA in the Water Security Division, who works in the emergency response part of our office. And then since Module 3 is all about emergency response plans, we thought that Bria would be a natural choice to lead today's presentation. So Bria, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charlene. So hello, everyone. My name is Bria Crawford, and I am a member of the emergency response team within the Water Security Assistance Branch. Today, I'll be giving you an overview of the Americas and Water Infrastructure Act, specifically discussing the emergency response plan guidance and template. But before I launch into today's content, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our website facilitator, Mackenzie, who will walk you through some administrative notes for the training.
So as we near the end of the workshop modules, here's a quick recap of what we've discussed in the previous modules. So the first module, we provided an overview of AWIA Section 2013 and background on how to certify your risk and resilience assessments and emergency response plans, as well as Section 2018 of AWIA. Then in Module 2, we covered the risk and resilience assessment requirements and the tools that EPA has developed to assist you in conducting your AWIA compliant risk and resilience assessment. Lastly, and today in this module, we will cover the emergency response plan requirements and the emergency response plan guidance and template that was developed to assist community water systems in developing or updating an AWIA compliant emergency response plan. Back to you, Bria.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mackenzie. We have 3 main goals for today. The first goal is to learn the background requirements and deadlines for emergency response plans, also known as ERPs, under AWIA Section 2013. The second is to understand how to utilize EPA's emergency response plan template and instructions to develop an AWIA compliant ERP. And the third goal for today is to learn about additional free emergency response tools and resources available to utilities. So first, I'll provide you with some background information on the importance of emergency response planning. And then second, we're going to discuss the AWIA requirements for emergency response plans. Then I'll provide you with an overview of the guidance itself, which includes a user-friendly template that can be used to develop and to update your ERPs and accompanying instructions on how to use the template. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and use a scenario from one of the Module 2 breakout sessions to demonstrate and discuss how you can create an ERP from a specific incident. And finally, I'll discuss some additional tools and resources that will assist you with emergency response planning for your templates. So a little background information. Why is it important to plan for emergencies and to develop a comprehensive ERP? Well, an emergency or an incident can happen at any time, as we know from recent events, such as the various wildfires, as well as some extreme amounts of tropical storms. This year is actually the second time, probably in history, that we've reached the Greek letter alphabet for naming storms. I think we may have just gone into iota in the Caribbean and also the Central America. So that's something very interesting and a little scary. And so in terms of these incidents and emergencies, if we're not prepared, then response may be ineffective. Recovery can also take longer and it'll be more costly in the long run. So overall, an ERP describes your utility strategies, resources, plans, and procedures to help you prepare for and to respond to an incident. This is whether an incident is natural or a man-made incident that can really threaten your utility and your overall mission. Now, incidents can occur from small main breaks or localized flooding to large-scale hurricanes, earthquakes, or system contamination, among some other examples. So when an incident occurs and you have a well-developed, tested, and/or exercised and a comprehensive ERP in place, you will need to respond and activate the procedures and protocols described in your emergency response plan. And that's why it's important that you have that set up. So this can include implementing personnel, emergency roles and responsibilities with your personnel or your staff. And you want to make sure that they already know how to handle these incidents and that they're trained on their specific emergency response roles. It can also include setting up your utilities incident command system structure, as well as your incident management systems that the utility is operating under. So just to note, some utilities may only have one or two operators, or maybe on the smaller scale. So it may be very difficult or impossible for you to actually implement an incident command system, but it's still important to learn and to see if you can tailor the ICS to actually fit the structure of your utility. This can also include recalling personnel on vacations and notifying external agencies such as your local emergency management agency, police, fire department, and state regulatory agency. And it's interesting, at a previous workshop, there was one utility in the Midwest that indicated that during a previous major flooding event that came up pretty quickly, they actually had to call some of their personnel who were at conferences and vacations to come back and actually help out during the incident. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have approximately 40% of your staff available at all times to cover the situations that can occur. Right here, this slide is just to provide you with a bigger picture look at Section 2013. So Section 2013, what it does is it amends the Safe Drinking Water Act, Section 1433, which was taken from the 2002 Bioterrorism Act. It applies to all community water systems serving more than 3,300 people, which is similar to the Bioterrorism Act. AWIA 2013, what it does, it requires that these systems conduct risk and resilience assessments and to update emergency response plans. So after which these are done, they must submit a certification to the EPA by the specified deadlines. So just want to note that you're just submitting the certification. You're not actually submitting your emergency response plans. Your emergency response plans are something that you want to have on your utility site, and you're just submitting the certification saying you have completed your response plan. And after that, you must continue to review your risk assessments and your ERPs every 5 years to determine if they need to be revised. So upon completion of your review, the system must submit to the EPA certification that has reviewed its assessment and revised it, and that's if it's applicable. You also want to make sure that you coordinate with your local emergency planning committees. This is also known as your LEPCs, to the extent possible when you're developing your RA as well as your ERP. And this is just so that you can gather some more information on the regional threats and identify some community-wide resources that can be included in the utility response plan. So it's pretty much all about communication and just making sure that everyone's on the same page. And then finally, this last little box we have here is you want to make sure that you maintain your records for your risk assessment and your emergency response plans for 5 years. And so that's after the due date for the certification. And so this all coincides with community water systems serving 3,300 or greater, for utilities serving less than the 3,300, and ERP is not required. However, it's something that is very important. It can really help you in the long run in case an incident does occur. And so this slide, I'm sure you probably saw this. It shows the decertification deadlines for your risk assessment based on your population served by your utility. So for your population of 50,000 and less than that 100,000, the December 31st, 2020 date is actually coming up. I can't believe it's already almost December. So that's one thing you really want to make sure that you're you're going ahead and doing. And so in terms of the emergency response plan, the Water Security Division is working with the Office of Enforcement and Compliance Assurance to define the process for enforcement. And so it's most likely similar to the process for the Bioterrorism Act of 2002. Overall, we're not here to, in a sense, penalize, but we really want to help the utilities, and we really want to help you understand how to get your ERPs done, especially with all of the resources that are provided on our website. Okay, so right now we're going to go into our first quiz question, and that will be a poll. So my utility updated its ERP in 2017. Does this count for AWIA, and can I certify my ERP is completed today?
Wonderful. So we had 65% say no, 22% said yes, and then 12% said maybe.
Great, thank you. So in terms of this question, the correct answer is no. It's a good idea that the utility took the initiative to update the ERP, but you're going to need to go back and make sure that it now covers all the criteria specified in AWIA, since this was the AWIA 2018. So the ERP, once again, was updated prior to AWIA, so they just need to make sure that it now covers the requirements set forth in AWIA section 2013. So going into the AWIA ERP criteria, there are 4 main criteria that are in the template. And so these 4 criteria include resilience strategies, emergency plans and procedures, mitigation, as well as detection strategies. In terms of resilience strategies, these are strategies and resources to improve your system resilience. Your emergency plans and procedures is the plans, procedures, and equipment to use in the event of a malevolent act or a natural hazard emergency that threatens the utility's ability to provide safe drinking water. Your third criteria is mitigation. So that's actions and procedures that can be used to reduce the impacts of malevolent acts or natural hazards. And then the 4th criteria, detection strategies, are strategies that are put in place to detect malevolent acts or any oncoming natural hazards that may threaten the system. So just to note that malevolent acts, which include cyber attacks or contamination, and natural hazards, which would include tornadoes, earthquakes, or floods. We may just refer to them as incidents from here on throughout the presentation. So just know if you hear incidents, that's in reference to the malevolent acts or natural hazards. And shortly, I will go ahead and just go through these 4 criteria just so that you can see how the new guidance is structured around them. All right, so we have poll question 1. There is no right or wrong answer to this. It's just to see where you all are. And so the question is your utility currently coordinating, or has your utility ever coordinated in the past with your local emergency planning committee or your LAPC?
So thank you guys for those responses. So we have 53% said yes, it's great. 16% said no, and then 14% said maybe, and then 17% said not applicable.
Awesome, thank you so much. So if you answered yes, that is great. You're on the correct path. In terms of if you answered no, so what you want to do is you really want to touch base with your community to learn exactly what they're doing for emergency response, as well as what they can learn from you. And if you said, I don't know, that is fine. You can go ahead and go to our website, as well as in our template. In the instructions, we actually have some links so you can go ahead and find your LEPCs. And so kind of going on into our next section, what I'd like to do now is just to provide you with an overview of our new ERP guidance, which includes a template and some corresponding instructions for using the guidance. And as you'll see in the upcoming slides, it's really structured after the 4 criteria that was introduced previously. And so these 4 criteria specified in AWIA that all of your ERPs must include. So as for the features of the ERP guidance, it's formatted as a single PDF document that provides some instructions on what information should be provided in each section of your ERP template. It also includes useful links for additional information and guidance. And within the PDF instructions, there will be the blank ERP template, which is in Microsoft Word format. And this is actually embedded in the PDF document and can be easily accessed and modified to meet your own utilities needs. During our discussion section, I'll actually be showing you how to download the instructions and how to access the actual template. So don't worry about that. And what we try to do is we really wanted to make the template user-friendly. And so there are features such as fillable tables. You also have some checklists and some charts. And this is just for you to use as a starting point for your utilities to develop your own plans. So once again, it's a starting point. You can feel free to delete some tables if you don't need them, as well as you can add. And just to note that although this template is currently designed for drinking water utilities, we're actually in the process of developing a similar one for wastewater utilities as well. So just look forward to that in the future. And so in this presentation, we did try and give a few examples of some additional information to be included in your ERP for wastewater utilities. What this slide right here shows is an actual overall outline for the guidance. And this is actually the table of content. So first you'll have your utility information, which isn't included in the 4 criteria, but this portion is very important just so if people are reviewing your ERP or in need that they actually know what's going on. And then after that, you do have your 4 criteria. So you have your resilience strategies, your emergency plans and procedures, your mitigation actions, and then your detection strategies. And so what I'll do is I'll just provide a little more information on each of these sections pertaining to the ERP template within the next slides. So this first section is your utility information section. And what it does is it contains some system related information about your utility that is readily available for your personnel, your first responders, and other response partner agencies during the incident. So it includes your utility overview, which for the section, you'll provide some basic information about your utility in the table of this section. And so this information is required here and it should be readily available. There's also personnel information. And so it is actually just a personnel roster that's available during an incident to quickly contact your employees. You also have the primary utility components. And so what this is, it's a list that features all components necessary to maintain an effective operation for your utility. And this includes some sections on wells, intakes, treatment plants, storage, distribution systems, and some treatment chemical storage. And of course, this is as appropriate. So if you don't actually have this information for your utility or it doesn't apply, it's not applicable, you don't need to fill out these sections. There's also a section for industry, chemical handling, and storage facilities. And so this is just so that you will know what industry surrounding your utilities can also be impacted by incidents such as an accidental release, hurricanes, or earthquakes. So it's really important that you understand what chemicals may be released in your area during an incident and how they can actually impact your utility operations. There's also a section for safety. In this section, you can even attach a health and safety plan if you do have one. If not, that's okay. But you really want to have this section just to show that there's easy access to safety materials and important safety information and procedures that will help protect your utility personnel during an incident. Another section is the response resources. So this is pretty much making sure that you have an accurate inventory of your available resources that are either maintained on site or they're readily available off-site. And so what this does is it really allows the utility responders to know what resources are readily available during an incident. And then the kind of last section that we do have under utility information are the key local services. And so for this, you really want to note the closest locations of key logistical and some medical services that you or a mutual aid and assistance providers may need during an incident. And so you just want to remember that overall within this incident, you may have some responders as well as some people who are coming to assist you that aren't used to your actual facilities or your sites. And so this just gives an overall overview so that they can come and help and understand exactly what's going on in utility, what's in the area, and how to get around. Right here, this is just an example of the fillable tables that you'll see in the template. Of course, like I said before, you have your wells, your intakes, your treatment plants. Throughout our discussion, I'll go through this table a little bit more. And once again, you can go ahead and modify this. It's in the Word document, and you can add rows and columns. You could delete rows and columns. So you can modify this however you want and whatever's applicable or not applicable. So going into the 4 criteria that was discussed in the table of contents, your first is the resilience strategies. And so this should contain the strategies and resources to improve the resilience of your system. And so overall, when it comes to resilience strategies, you really want to incorporate how you'll assign different roles and responsibilities, how you'll work with the response partners, as well as how you intend to communicate during an incident. What we have is emergency response roles. So an effective ERP actually involves active participations of a variety of both the utility and external response partner agency personnel. It's important that you have well-defined roles and responsibilities so that everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to do. If you can implement this, you also have your incident command system roles. And so your utility should really consider integrating a standardized incident management structure, such as the ICS inter-response procedures. And once again, this is if it's applicable to the size of your utility. There's also communication. And so communication during an incident is actually very important, and it's critical that you relay information to not only your employees, but also government agencies, the public, the media, and others about some potential risks to health, infrastructure, and the environment. There's also media outreach. And so here you want to list contact information in the table provided for all media outlets that your utility may coordinate with during notification efforts. So this can include your newspaper, your local newspaper, if there are any social media sites, the television, as well as some radio stations. So this is who you'll actually be reaching out to during these events. There's also risk communication. So in terms of risk communication, it's really just a tool that helps your water utility deal with public messaging during emergencies. And what this is it's used to actually enhance the knowledge and the understanding of an incident. Within your facility and within your community, you really want to build that trust and credibility. And you really want to go ahead and encourage that constructive dialogue, as well as provide some guidance on appropriate protective actions. And then last but not least, for a resilience strategy, there's also public notification. And so inside the template, you can actually insert your public notifications in that portion, or a reference where it could be found. So make sure that your templates are consistent with the regulatory requirements for public notification. And what this slide is once again just an example of how the resilience strategy section looks within our template. And so here you can actually see a list of names. All of the italicized text are just examples. You may not have these specific roles within your ERP, but this is just to help you understand exactly what you can put in this section. And so you really want to make sure that you can get all the information possible to implement and to include within your ERP. The second of the criteria, you have the emergency plans and procedures. And so once again, you want to make sure that this matches up with AWIA. And so it should actually contain any plans, procedures, and equipment that can be used during an incident. There are 2 types of emergency plans and procedures. You have your core response procedures, and then you have your incident-specific response procedures. In terms of your core procedures, they're really the building blocks for your incident-specific procedures since they apply across a broad variety of incidents. Of course, examples, hurricane, earthquakes, floods, just our usual examples. And so these include access. One thing is a specific or significant challenge your utility may face after a major incident is really trying to gain access to critical facilities and other locations to assess the damage and implement your repairs. You also have physical security, and that includes protecting your utility facilities, your equipment, and any vital records that are essential to restoring your operations once an incident has occurred. Another important one is cybersecurity. And so your utility should consider adopting cybersecurity best practices to reduce vulnerabilities to cyber attacks and to develop, implement, and drill response and recovery procedures for any cyber incidents to actually minimize any impacts in the event of a successful attack. Another core procedure is also power loss. And so your utility should really consider preparing for loss of power and know exactly how to respond to the loss of power and then how you can recover from this specific incident. There's also emergency drinking water supplies. And so within your emergency response plan, you should really consider clearly defining how your utility, along with your other external response partners, such as emergency management, would supply some alternate drinking water to your community during both a short-term as well as a long-term outage. Another core procedure, you have sampling and analysis. So you want to include some pre-identified sampling sites, procedures for sample collection of both known and unknown contaminants, chain of custody, sample preservation, sample transport, as well as a list and locations of contract analytical laboratories. And lastly, one of the most important things is family. And so your personnel are most likely to report for duty or to stay safe and stay on the job during an incident if they know that their families are safe and cared for. So you really want to go ahead and identify the actions that could be taken before, during, and after an incident that are unique to each hazard. At the end of the day, you want you safe, you want your family safe, because if you're not safe, how are you supposed to help others? And recently within the pandemic, family was actually very important in terms of the utility staff and personnel, because if someone was sick, they weren't able to come on site, or there were incidents where some utility personnel had to stay on site at the facilities for a quarantine period before they were actually able to return to their families. So this is something that you really want to look into and consider, especially since we're still having some issues with the pandemic right now. Our second part of the emergency plans and procedures is our incident-specific response procedures. And so this should be very accessible. It's pretty much like a rip and run document that can be detached and easily taken to the field. And so you may need 1 or 2 pages to cover specific response information in these procedures, since you already have addressed basic emergency response steps under your core response procedures. And what we have done is the EPA has developed a type of ISRP, and this is called the Incident Action Checklist. And so on our site, we actually have 12 different types of incident action checklists that you can go ahead and download and use. And so your system can just really use them as a guide to go ahead and create your own incident-specific response procedures. Right here is just an example of an incident action checklist pertaining to the pandemic. And so you'll see a link right here on the right, and that's just so you can go ahead and access the different checklists that we do have available. The third criteria, we have our mitigation actions. And so more specifically, AWIA states that this is actions, procedures, and the equipment which can obviate and significantly lessen the impact of an incident on the public health and the safety and supply of your drinking water provided to your community. And so this includes development of alternative source water options, relocation of water intakes, as well as construction of flood protection barriers. Since these 3 mitigation options are specifically included in the law, you should indicate in your utilities ERP that you've considered all 3 of these specific mitigation actions, but the actions do not have to be implemented if they're not consistent with your utilities risk profile as it's determined in your risk assessment. So what you want to remember is that it's more cost effective to mitigate the risk from natural disasters than it is to repair the damage after the disaster. So just some examples of mitigation projects that you can include. There can be an elevation of electrical panels at a lift station to prevent flooding damage. You can also include some replacement of piping with flexible joints to prevent earthquake damage. There's also the reinforcement of water towers to prevent tornado damage. And so overall, your mitigation measures require financial investment by the utility. However, mitigation could really prevent more costly future damages and improve the reliability of a service during a disaster. And a funny story, but it's not actually that funny, is literally a year ago on Thanksgiving, while my dad was preparing our annual Thanksgiving meal, our boiler actually went out. And so it was very interesting because we weren't expecting the boiler to go out, and we kind of just had to stop what we were doing, find a boiler that was available on that day, and see how we can pick it up. And so just think, if we would have checked the boiler or we would have gone ahead and replaced it, if we noticed that it was getting old before it went out, that would have been a mitigation action. And so we had to, stop everything we were doing, find a boiler that was extremely expensive, make sure that we can get it actually installed. And so that's something that you really want to think about, not just with your utility, but also in your personal life as well. So I would just go ahead and check your boilers. I know we may not all be able to meet next week with our families, but you still want to be able to have some hot water. So I'm just going to go into some mitigation resources. We have some guidances that can actually help. So these are just some related resources and tools that the EPA has developed that utilities can use to address mitigation options for hazards that may be at risk to, again, as identified in your RA. And so this includes a hazard mitigation guide, which can help your utilities to identify some potential disaster-specific mitigation projects and funding proposed to mitigation projects. You actually have a flood resilience guide. And so this can help utilities understand the local flooding threat and identifies practical mitigation options to protect critical assets against flooding. Another guide is the drought response and recovery guide. And so this provides some key resources for responding to drought emergencies and building long-term resilience. We have our earthquake resilience guide, and this helps utilities be more resilient to earthquakes. And so on our website, you can actually find and download these projects that can be really helpful. And just a few more guides we have. There's also the power resilience guide, which can help identify how to increase your resilience during power outages. And then there's the resilience strategies guide, and this will help utilities understand how extreme weather events can impact utility operations and provide some examples of different actions that you can take to really prepare for some potential impacts. So detection strategies is the last section of the ERP as it's required by AWIA. And so it really pertains to the detection strategies that can aid in the detection of incidents that may threaten your utility. These strategies can range from no cost, such as the See Something, Say Something campaign at your utility, or ones that require more resources in implementing. An example would be installing some motion sensors or video cameras. And so you really want to keep in mind that an effective response to an emergency requires timely detection. You want to know about something as soon as possible, even before it happens, so that you can go ahead and respond to that specific incident. Right here, this is just another example of our template. And so it shows just some of the effective strategies for detecting some common threats. This includes unauthorized entry. So we want to go ahead and have a properly installed and maintained intrusion detection system that provides almost instantaneous notification of break-ins and other unauthorized access to your utility facilities. There's also water contamination, and so you really want to make sure that you have notification of source water contaminants. These can come from many different agencies and organizations, including your primacy agency, 911, your LEPC, etc. And also some potential contamination in your distribution system can be detected through your customer complaints, as well as some public health surveillance, and even when it comes to sampling analysis. So these can help alert your utility of potential backflows or different events. So you really want to make sure you utilize all of your resources. Another detection strategy is for cyber intrusion, and so that's really learning about and reporting cyber threats. And so it helps your utility be better prepared to detect and respond to this kind of malevolent act. You also have hazardous chemical releases, natural hazards, as well as some power outages. And so you really want to make sure you have these detection strategies in place so that you know if one of these threats can occur. So we have our quiz 2 question. And so according to AWIA, which of the following needs to be included in your ERP?
We had 98% say all of the above, and then 1% said detection strategies, another 1% said emergency plans and procedures.
Awesome, thank you. So the correct answer is all of the above. So you just want to remember that all 4 of these criteria are needed to be included in your ERP. And going into our next session, and so now that we've actually gone through the ERP guidance template and instructions, we'll just have a group discussion based on the fictitious water utility, Springview Water District. And so you went ahead and you used this in module 2 during your breakout sessions. And what we're going to do is just use this to go and show how you can develop your ERP. Just a quick review of the scenario. So Springview Water District is a small utility located outside of Atlanta, Georgia, that serves 35,000 people. Here are some critical assets that Springview Water District considered when developing their risk and resilience assessment. And so that will be relevant as they develop their ERP. So some of the critical assets, you have 8 pumping stations. You have a supervisory control and data acquisition system. You also have a water plant, and you have an IT business and financial systems. So just remember these critical assets because they'll help when it comes to choosing different things throughout your ERP. And so the hypothetical threat that we chose, it pertains to flooding. And so the threat is that there is a 100-year flood event. And so Springview Water District is located next to the winding river where it draws its water source from. So they are concerned that a 100-year flood could damage electrical components of their water quality monitoring equipment, which is currently on the ground and it's not elevated. So this could really disrupt their monitoring of the finished water that's leaving their facility. And so here is our website. Now I'm going to go ahead and just pull up the website and show you the process to download and save your ERP. And so right here, this is the drinking water and wastewater resilience page that we do have. So of course the link is epa.gov/water resilience. If you scroll down, you'll see the plan section. And so under this plan section, you want to go ahead and click Develop Emergency Response Plans. And so if you continue to keep scrolling down this page, you'll have your ERP template and instructions PDF. You're just going to go ahead and click this link. And as this comes up, the first thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and save this to your desktop. I have this little AWIA desktop, so I'm going to go ahead and save it. And then once this is saved, I can go ahead to my folder and click on the instructions. And so you really want to make sure you save this to your desktop before you try and download the actual ERP guidance. And so right here on the second page, you see this little logo, word logo that says AWIA ERP template. You're going to go ahead and click on this. I'm going to open this file, and this is the template that you'll be downloading. And so right here, one of the first things you see is your CWS name, which you're going to input. And so I'm just going to quickly transition to a pre-populated version. And as I scroll down, I went ahead and put in Springview Water District. And so this is what you'll see that comes up. So you'll have your CWS and ERP information. So you want to make sure that you go ahead and put in your PWSID, the street address. So the street address for this utility is Water is Cool Boulevard. It's located in Blue Swanee, Georgia. That is just a fake little city that was made up. Your phone number, your population served, which is 35,000, and who it was prepared by. So this ERP was actually prepared by Ariel, the Little Mermaid. We figured that she knows a lot about water, and so she would actually be very good when it comes to a water utility ERP. However, Ariel did choose Homer Simpson to review the ERP. Homer is not that reliable. Homer likes to eat a lot of donuts. He's not very good on the job. And so I personally would not have chosen Homer to review the document. And so the initial date that this document was completed was November 13th. And right here you have a plan distribution. This is really just to show it's user friendly. So I can just go ahead and type these in. General manager, site manager, I think was one of them. So once again, you can it's really user friendly. This is in a Word document. You can add items, you can delete them if you don't need. So this just gives you some extra space depending on who your plan is distributed to. And so right here is our change history page. And so today is the 19th. Bugs Bunny is actually our ERP lead. Bugs Bunny, he's pretty reliable. I think he has a good energy when it comes to his work. Bugs Bunny eats a lot of carrots, which is a great source of vitamin C to help with energy levels. And so Bugs Bunny noticed that when Homer reviewed the ERP, he actually didn't do so well of a reviewing, which is why we're going to go ahead and have a change history. And so today, Bugs Bunny will be doing an AWIA 2018 section 2013 update. And this is where we go into our table of contents. So of course you have your utility information, and then we have our 4 criteria, which are the resilience strategies, emergency plans and procedures, your mitigation actions, and then your detection strategies. And so going into your utility information, of course, once again, you're just putting in your PWSID, your utility name and address, your owner, directions. So you want to make sure that you include some directions for anyone who's using your ERP that's not necessarily a part of the utility, but is a responder. Your population served, the ERP lead, which of course is Bugs Bunny, and then just in case Bugs Bunny is out playing some basketball in Space Jam, we have an alternate contact who is going to be Mickey Mouse. And so Mickey Mouse is another reliable person, pretty much ahead of the team. And then you're just going to put the location of where your manuals are. And right here is a checklist. That's one of the things that we did discuss. It's the checklist to actually show what are some of the things you want to include in your ERP. So kind of going back to the critical assets that was discussed in the slides for Springview. So depending on your utility, you can go ahead and check these. You can also uncheck things that you don't need. And so just a reiteration, I hope you don't get tired of this. It's user friendly. So it allows you, as you're updating it, if you need to take something out, you can uncheck it. You update it again. If you're adding something, you can go ahead and check it. And just for our Springview, of course, we have that SCADA system. So we checked that. We also talked about power. So we went ahead and checked that. We are including some site plans. There's a water treatment facility that we have. We also have those 8 pumping stations and then a map of distribution systems, especially since it's a water treatment facility. And then we're going to go ahead and just click this pressure bound map as well. And so now we're going to go ahead into personnel information. So we have an interesting group of personnel on our site. We have Huey Duck, Dewey Duck, Louie Duck. We also have Minnie Mouse, and then we have Popeye. And so these are just some critical assets to our facilities. Huey, Dewey, and Louie do get into a lot of trouble during their DuckTales episodes, but for this purpose, their different incidents can actually help them with creating this ERP. You just want to go ahead and make sure you list the information of who are your personnel and then just some of their job duties. And you also want to make sure you have their contact information as well as any emergency information just in case they're not on site so that you can know how to get in contact with them if they're needed. And so just kind of going ahead, of course, what we mentioned before was the primary utility components, which are the wells, the intakes, the treatment plants. So you may not have all of these on your site. We have this option within our tables where you can go ahead and if you don't need it, you can delete it. Backspace. Voila, it is gone. Of course, if I did that by accident, I can go ahead and undo that. And if I have a well name, ABC can be a well name, but I only have 1 and I don't have 3. What I can do is I can delete these 3 rows. I'm going to delete the entire row. If I want to insert a row, I can go ahead and just right click, insert rows below. So user friendly, anyone can use this, Microsoft Word. So that's just an example of how you can delete a section, add rows, etc. There's also this option right here where we have this little triangle. So if you click here, it can actually just hide the section. So let's say you don't want to delete it, but you still want it to be in your specific document on your desktop. You can go ahead and hide that section. I can go ahead and hide treatment plants. And now you're doing an update, and let's say you actually do need to include it. So you can just unhide it for both your intakes as well as your treatment plants. Just going down here, of course, storage and distribution system. And then we have the treatment chemical storage facilities. And so one thing, if you remember from our scenario, is that we have 8 pumping stations. And so let's say the first one includes chlorine, and then you'll add some comments. So just to kind of add some more discussion, I'm just going to go ahead and enter pump house number 2. And you can go ahead and give some examples of what chemicals may be stored on your site. So just going ahead and just remembering you can go ahead and just insert more of whatever you have and then the chemicals, and then you'll just have comments. And so that will be going in the comment section. And then these are just some other tables that are listed within the template as well. You have your industry chemical handling facilities, chemical storage tanks, and then we go into the safety information. So let's just go through, let's do toxic material detection and testing supplies, and then let's do emergency food and water supplies. So where are some of the locations that you may have these on your site? So what we're doing here is we're just using these little examples just to kind of get you thinking about what you can input into your ERP. So another section, we have safety information. So the topic right here is wind speed, and then it just gives you a description. Utility personnel may not work outdoors when the sustained wind speed is 45 mph or greater. And so since we're talking about flooding, I'm just going to type in flooding, and if we can get 2 descriptions.
Water is up to the raw water station. A nearby creek is 5 feet above normal levels. The level is above the spillway.
We also have response resources. So this is just an example of kinds, generator, fuels, pumps. And so kind of just going back to what I said before, all of these are just examples. So you can, if you don't have, this, you can just go ahead and delete the row. Or instead of deleting the row, you can include whatever you have. We also have this section for essential services. So kind of what we were saying before, your key local services, your hospitals, gas stations, pharmacies, ATM. And then we start getting into the actual 4 criteria. So the first one is your resilience strategies. You have water utility and partner roles, and these are just some examples, like an example of its superintendent, operations chief, county public affairs officer. And then you have some external response partner roles. So I just highlighted 3. And so for instance, your LEPC, does anyone have an idea, or can anyone just share one responsibility that their LEPC may have during an incident?
Set up a command center. The county LEPC can help coordinate or help coordinate with the state.
What about for neighboring water utility?
They could send staff to help support the water utility. Emergency connections for backup water supply, mutual aid agreements, help with communication issues, or checking the interconnections.
And so the last one for this section, we're just going to do mutual aid.
They can send equipment or any other chemicals, provide supplies.
All right, so I'm just going to keep on going ahead just for the purpose of time. Then we also, if you do have your incident command system roles, you can kind of go into here. We have communication, external communication. So you can go ahead and put in this section, your contact list. You also have a list for external response partner contact list, and you just want to make sure, once again, you have a point person and their position, and then you put in all their contact information. The same with the critical customer contact list. We also have some communication equipment. So this is a communication equipment inventory. So if we could get like 2 types of communication equipment that may be used.
We've had radios, 2-way radios, cell phones.
media outreach, public notification template. And so this is the section where you can go ahead and just insert your template for public notifications, or you can just reference where it can be found. So that's why you pretty much have this empty space right here. You can go ahead and attach it, or just type in a reference. The next section on the next criteria, you have your emergency plans and procedures. And so I just highlighted a few that will go ahead and go with this specific scenario. So one, of course, will be access. You will also have your physical security since it's flooding, and you don't know who may try and have a malevolent incident while things are going on. Power loss was another one. Right here for your emergency alternate drinking water supplies, you can go ahead and just add descriptions. Sampling and analysis. So these were things that we covered. One thing that was really important that I stated earlier was your family and utility personnel well-being. And so right here is a family disaster plan. And so that's really good that it's actually included in the template. So you can go ahead and just describe what your family disaster plan would be. And then we also have your incident-specific response procedures. I just went ahead and highlighted flooding since that's our specific incident. And as you see within the template, here's the link for you to access the incident action checklist. You know, if you want to use the incident action checklist, and if you want to include that within your ERP as an attachment, you can use the checklist and find it for flooding and add that in there. And so this specific scenario is just for flooding, but you can also include incident action checklists for other things such as hurricanes, you know, your cybersecurity. So I just highlighted it for this example, but it's your ERP, so you can include other incident action checklists as well. We also have our mitigation actions. So I just highlighted alternative source water options. And so one option was a well from a municipal golf course. You also have your interconnected utilities. Make sure you have your utility information. And so these are some of the mitigation actions that can be used. So a type will be the water intake relocation, watertight doors, earthquake. And then we also have your detection strategies, which is the last of the 4 criteria. And so these are just some examples of the different threats that can occur and the detection methods. So you can use these. If you have other detection methods, you can go ahead and type that in or insert those as well. And so our threat is a flood, and just a possible detection method could be to notify the Army Corps. And then a procedure will be to use your flood incident action checklist. And this is just an overall view and examples of how to use the ERP template and how to actually fill it out. So some final thoughts on ERPs is you want to make sure that as you respond to an incident, you should document all of your decisions and actions and expenditures. So this is important just for justifying any incident costs and potentially seeking reimbursement once the incident is resolved. So good incident documentation includes creating a paper trail for receipts. You want to have your records as well as some photographs and some personnel timesheets. One resource that we actually have that can be used for different incidents, we have our water utility response on the Go app. And you can actually download this yourself on your phone. So if you have Apple, of course, you can use the App Store. If you have an Android, you could use the Google Play Store, and you can just search for this on your phone, tap install, and once it's installed, you can open it. You can also allow for notifications and set this up just in case there's a severe weather forecast in your area. And once again, this is a free app. I have it installed on my phone. The other day we were getting some horrible, we had like a tornado warning up here and the wind was horrible. And so I actually used the app just to see exactly what was going on because it came out of nowhere. And here is the, I guess, the home screen that you'll see for the app. And so you'll have the track severe weather, your contact response partners. There's also a tab for response to incidents, one for taking notes and recording damages. So that's really good if you want to add some photographs of the different things that you do notice. And with those photographs, you want to include some notes. You also have the inform incident command, and then you can access some additional planning information. And just some other things, so training. Of course, once your ERP is complete, it's important that you train your utility personnel and your response partners on its content and their individual roles and responsibilities. So you want to make sure that you conduct some periodic trainings, and this can include seminars, different workshops, tabletop exercises, and this will help to ensure that your ERP procedures will be effectively implemented during an actual response incident. And so on our website, once again, we have some free resources and some tools. So you have your how to develop a multi-year training and exercise tool. We have tabletop exercise tools, and we also have an exercise development toolbox. So these resources are free. I like free things. I don't know about you. So you want to make sure you use this to your advantage. And so I'm actually done with my presentation. So I'm actually going to go ahead and turn it over to Charlene if you're ready.
Yeah, thank you so much for such an informative presentation, Bria. And thank you everyone for attending our Module 3 AWIA workshop. Here we are at the end of our multi-module workshop. Thank you all again for joining us today, and this concludes our webinar.